I'm Spencer Mazyck, and joining me now is lawyer turned freelance photographer Mohl. He specializes in travel, nature, and outdoor photography, and his work has appeared in National Geographic, Escape, and outside publications. Eric joins us today from Panama City, Panama. Welcome, Eric. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Spencer.
So, Eric, you were born and raised in New York City. And around what age, though, did you discover that you had a passion or maybe even a strong interest in travel?
It probably started in high school, going way back when I kind of was a deadhead, but partly because I enjoyed the music and the people, but much of it had to do with the fact that, you know, you'd go on tour for a week or two and miss a week or two of college and wander about and see Virginia and Maryland and Georgia and then out to the Midwest and eventually out to California. And that became the first means where I'm like, I just like traveling. And I think I was more of a deadhead because it allowed me to go travel. And from there, went off to Europe a couple weeks. And then I'm like, I need to do more of this. And then that's where it all started.
Well, so did you also develop an interest for photography at the same time?
Pretty much, yeah. My interest in photography came at first just with basically wanting to capture things I was experiencing and seeing. And then that became a strong passion in and of itself. Probably it was during the college years where both of those things really started to come to fruition, and they were passions of mine. I mean, I was an art history major, basically for feeling that I loved the arts and the study of the arts, but felt I didn't have any skills, and suddenly found photography, and I felt like, you know what, I don't think I'm too bad. I'm not going to be an Anna Leibovitz, but one of those is probably enough. And I just really got into photography and enjoyed that, and it worked perfectly with travel. Not that that's what I did immediately following college, but
right. Yeah, I heard. Is it true, though, about a month before you began classes at Brooklyn Law School, you called your mom from Turkey saying that you didn't want to go?
That is true. I actually think it was closer to 2.5 weeks or so before I was about to begin school. Called my mom and said, you know, Mom, I don't want to say they made me do it, but, you know, I finished college and didn't really know what to do, and some sort of graduate degree seemed like the thing to do, and law was the thing I found most compelling of those. I called my mom and I said, you know what, I really enjoy doing this, and I want to stay on the road longer. And, you know, after 2 nights of very expensive calls on their part, speaking to them, mom crying and saying, please come, do this now. You have this opportunity. Don't pass this up. You can do whatever you want in the future. I took that to heart and came back, went to school. But then I always kind of had that ace card that I could pull out when mom said, really, you're going to go traveling? Like, well, let's do this now, and you can do whatever you want later. And that's kind of what happened.
Well, so even though you were persuaded, though, to go to law school, did you know from the beginning, though, right from the start, that you probably wouldn't practice for very long?
I did not know that at first. You know, this just seemed like the path I was taking. I had wanted to get into some kind of law that would allow me to do some travel, spend some time abroad. And I was, you know, the EU was a concept then that was really just about to come into fruition, and I was looking into different ways of maybe working that into my practice as, you know, as a first and second year student. And then through a summer associate program, I kind of found a mentor, Kismet, and we just connected, who was a big influence on me. And he had a very interesting kind of boutique practice, more of transactional work of setting up some high net worth clients. He just had connections to money, whether it was in Asia or Europe or the States. And I spent a lot of time, or a number of times, going to Europe and other places with him. And I really enjoyed that. It wasn't that that I did not find that compelling, but it just didn't win out. And all through basically the bar exam, I thought I was going to be practicing with him. I took off 3 months after the bar exam before I was supposed to begin my actual practice of law officially. And I came back and he turned to me and said, this isn't really what you want. And over those 3 months of traveling through, backpacking through Southeast Asia, I had kind of come to the conclusion, but maybe was not honest enough with myself to admit that this isn't really what I wanted.
But Eric, you ended up practicing as a corporate attorney for a little more than 3 years. So during that time, though, were you just saving up enough money so that you could then take a trip that didn't have a scheduled return date?
Yeah, well, at that point when he said to me, "This isn't really what you want," I realized it's not, and that became the goal. Was I'm just gonna work my butt off for some time and save up as much as I can. And my goal was I wanted to have a trip without an end. I'd been privileged enough to, before that point, had done 3 months in Southeast Asia. Before law school, took 2 years off, spent 6 months of that traveling right before law school. And those are very long trips by anyone's standards, except for maybe Australians. And at that point, I thought I had maybe, okay, I'll be satisfied with, having a career and having smaller bits of travel in between there. And I realized during those 3 months before starting my practice that it just really, I needed freedom. I needed something that was not, the temptation of the golden handcuffs it's tempting, and it's hard and it's scary to make those changes. And everyone said, "Really, you're just going to give this up?" But sometimes you just have to do what your heart tells you need to do.
Well, so Eric, though, but when you left the law firm to begin what became a 4-year trek through Asia, did you know then that you would never practice law again?
At that point, I had a feeling that going off on this trip without an end, it was going to be hard to come back and ever do that again. I didn't rule it out. I did stop paying my New York and New Jersey state bar association fees. But I didn't rule that out, but had a feeling it was not going to happen. And lo and behold, after that, I realized this career of photography kind of happened during that trip. Luckily, my partner and wife had been a journalist and magazines her whole basically career right from after school. She had many ins and connections. During that trip through Asia, she started to do some travel stuff, and my photos naturally went with them. And that kind of got my foot in the door a little bit more quickly and easily than it might have otherwise.
Well, and Eric, what did your mom say this time around about your decision?
She was definitely sad, but I think she realized, maybe not at first when I left for Asia, but somewhere during that trip, she realized that I'm following my dream, and what they always wished and said to me, we just want you to be happy, do whatever you want. She kind of had to live by those words, and they realized I'm happy and living my dream. And now they have gone from at first being terrified of it to being so proud of it. And they, tell all their friends and associates that this is what my son is doing. He's traveling around for, years now, being a photographer and experiencing the world at a very slow and in-depth pace. And that's what the project we're currently doing is all about.
Well, and I want to get to the project in just a second, but it's great that your family embraced your decision. But during your travels then or even now, are you ever concerned about making ends meet or paying the bills?
Of course. Making ends meet for many people, most people, especially creative people, is often very difficult. We were kind of self-sufficient, in the beginning of the trip between what's happening in the publishing industry and just the general economy. We've actually been dipping into a bit of savings of late, but we know that'll come back, and we're persistent and we're persevering and keeping the journey on the road. We are changing our format a bit, and we've always made our blog kind of non-commercial, but we are now seeking a sponsor to kind of partner with us and be associated with our journey. And hopefully that'll help us make more than ends meet.
And do you think, though, that generally most Americans are a little bit too focused on material possessions?
Oh, absolutely. We've sacrificed a lot to do this. That's, everyone always says, "Oh, what a dream. I wish I could do that." Anyone can do this, but you have to sacrifice a lot, and it's scary. But many things that are dreams in life require that leap of faith and trying to do it. You just have to have faith that the universe will, make things work out for you. And it usually does if you believe in yourself and you're open to all those things. Doesn't mean it's not scary. It doesn't mean there aren't trying times, but that's what life is. It's not always easy. Mm-hmm. The golden handcuffs are tempting, though, and it's hard to break away from that.
Well, and I mentioned earlier that you're now in Panama City, Panama. So can you tell us about your current adventure, your Trans-America's journey?
Yeah, our Transamerica's journey, we've been on the road for a bit over 6 years now. I think we just hit day 2,222 last week.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah. So it's an overland working road trip is what we call it. We are writing stories for various publications, newspapers and magazines in the US and Canada that we freelance for, and other side consulting work in tourism. It's basically a really in-depth exploration of not just what we call America, the United States, but that we are all part of the Americas. North, Central, and South America are all the Americas and all the people therein. And we move very slowly. As I say, it's 6 years on, and we've only done the first 10 countries of the 23 land-based countries in the Americas, North and Central America. We're in Panama. Next month, we have the logistical issue that I was just trying to sort out of shipping our truck down to Colombia to begin the South American portion, which is going to take at least another 6, if not 10 years at the rate we move.
When do you think that it's going to take? I think you said 6 to 10 years. Do you think it'll take that time for you and your wife, Karen, to complete this journey?
You know, I hate making promises because every time we say, oh, yeah, we'll be there in 3 months or in next year, I'm always off. We just keep getting slower and slower. Opportunities come up, consulting projects come up. You know, this is not a vacation. It's not a trip. It's a working road trip. And just the logistics of travel, keeping it on the road, organizing things, planning things, that's a full-time job. And then there's the full-time job of trying to make money.
Well, so Eric, tell me this. How lucky are you to have a partner in crime in Karen, someone who shares your passion for travel and the outdoors?
Well, I couldn't do this trip without her. I wouldn't be who I am without her. You know, my photography career, I think, pretty much got the kickstart only because she was an accomplished writer who had connections with many magazines. And you're traveling, and when she could tell the editor, oh, I happen to have a photographer with me that has photos, boom, quickly and easily in Asia, before I had a portfolio or anything published, I was able to get things published. And you know, once you get your foot in the door and you have some of those things, it makes life a lot easier. So it wouldn't have happened without that. And just having someone to share this with. I mean, I have traveled alone before. There are some rewarding things about traveling alone that you don't experience when you are with someone. You know, there's challenges with living with your partner 24/7. Most people say I couldn't do that. We have those challenges. You know, it's definitely it's different. You know, we in our journey of the past 6 years, we've probably spent more time together than people who've been married for 60 years. You know, in actual time together, because we're together 24/7 most every day of the week and the year.
Well, and do you think that the two of you will be still traveling together come some 20 to 25 years from now?
I think that would be the goal. We hope at some point we can make this more than just getting by on the skin of our teeth and make this a viable, sustainable business. We are doing more consulting to that end. And if we can do that, absolutely. I think maybe instead of moving constantly, although we move very slowly constantly, I think it would be really neat to do some of that consulting, you know, 6 months in Santiago, Chile, and then 4 months in Tuscany somewhere, and doing our, you know, working on projects that way and allowing us to travel in that way. I don't think in 20 years we're going to want to be driving and, you know, packing the truck and unpacking the truck and moving maybe as much as we do now. But I think we'd like ideally in some way to keep this lifestyle going. And that's what we're working hard to make this a viable, sustainable, not just a 3-year, 6-year, 10-year project, a viable, sustainable lifestyle is really what our goal is with this Transamerica's journey.
And finally, Eric, do you have any regrets about going to law school?
No, no regrets. I mean, the only thing that would be a regret is, wow, I could have used some of that money for other things. But no, I mean, the experience, the knowledge I have, connections I've made, no, there were life-changing moments there and things I've learned. And look, I mean, just the fact I can say I was a lawyer, whether it should or not, whether it's important or not, add some cachet. When you need to, pull out a little ace card. Oh, I'm not just a traveler and a photographer. I was a lawyer. People sometimes, especially when you're dealing with government agencies consulting on travel and stuff, in Latin America, that degree means a lot. And sometimes that is useful. And I have no regrets about that.
Yes, it certainly does give you a little bit more credibility. Well, I want to say thanks so much for joining us today, and I hope that you guys enjoy the rest of your time there in Central America.
Thanks for having us, Spencer. I appreciate it.
For more information on this or other topics, subscribe to BloombergLaw.com. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for joining us. Bye, everybody.